Welcome to another episode of 5 Elements of Success Player Development Series. I'm Roger Nick, your host and founder of the Junior Golf Hub. We're really excited about this holiday special show, talking about equipment. Maybe some of you good boys and girls out there are going to get some equipment for Christmas, so look forward to talking more about the right equipment for you as well as we get into the off-season training and planning. So we've got Nick Novak here sitting on my right here in place of Dennis Hillman, who is at home on Christmas assignment. So Dennis, welcome at home. Also have Kyle Panic here to my left in place of Tyler Campbell, who's on assignment as well in the North Pole. So we're really excited to have Kyle back here talking about his plan from last week, his nutritional plan as well. As always, we want to make sure that we keep this interactive. So send in those questions, comments to 5elementsatthegolfperformancecenter.com or send them into our YouTube chat. Really want to hear from you so we can make this better for you and for us. So thanks so much for tuning in. Our pop quiz this week: is equipment more important than swing technique? Let me repeat that. Is equipment more important than swing technique? This may surprise you, and it's been a really internal battle here on that one. So please send in your answer so we can hopefully you get a chance to win this great Pitch Fix ball repair tool. It's really great. So hopefully you get to win that. Send in your answer there, and later on in the show we're going to pull out your name in the hat, or out of the hat I should say, not in the hat, but out of the hat. So again, thanks so much for tuning in. Kyle Panic, last week we talked about nutritional planning and off-season, so give us a recap on last week's show.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were talking about our nutrition plan and how to build it for the off-season. So we want to get stronger in the gym, so we got to start by finding our calories and eating more than we actually need. That's how we get stronger. That's how we build strength to bring that over in the next season. Then we got to find our protein and our fats, and of course our carbohydrates for our energy. And once we find that, we have to stick to it, right? We can't just do it for a day, a week, not even a month. Off season about 3 to 4 months up here in the Northeast. So we want to get in the gym, get really strong, and we got to be consistent about it. There's a bunch of cool numbers and all that good stuff. I really advise you guys to go watch that episode last week on our YouTube channel. There's some really good nuggets in there that you can take home and build your own off-season program nutritionally for yourself. Yeah, not only is it good information, but there's a nice little recipe in there also for a little snack, right? Yeah. So make sure you're tuning in and look for those in the archive episodes. So it's some great information. And thanks, Kyle, for that recap. Yeah. Again, this week we're talking about equipment, off-season check-in, gappings. How does the equipment affect development? And also, what is it, the chicken or the egg here? So we're making sure the chicken and the egg, how that plays a role, and how we're going to actually go through the off season. Looks like we have some technical difficulty. Maybe we're still up on the show. All right, thank you so much. So we had a little bit of a power surge. So apologize if you got cut out there. So again, just talking about equipment, off season, and how we're actually playing, how the equipment plays a role in the off season development. We've got Nick Novak here, our Director of Custom Clubs and lead coach here at GPC, or Golf Performance Center. Nick, kind of thinking about the equipment and what an integral role it plays in development. Tell us what you're seeing and how that plays that role for Dennis in the coaching side in their off-season training.
Yeah, well, first I want to apologize for the power outage. I kind of have that effect on electricity sometimes. Coming here, I had a little too much coffee. Yeah. A little too fired up. Energy, right? Yeah, so sometimes it backfires on me. But, essentially with the equipment, we're trying to create a healthy environment for development. We're trying to make sure that the junior is not going to compensate in any way to figure it out, because we all know kids will figure it out. Yeah. We know that kids are master of figuring it out, and so that can have positive effects and negative effects if they have the wrong equipment. So if you have the right equipment and they're figuring it out, they can really blossom and bloom and create this kind of model for development. And if they have heavy or extra long equipment, they will also figure that out, and a lot of times at the expense of their technique. So
yeah, and that may be a hint to our pop quiz there. So
never know.
So hopefully maybe you got that little nugget in. Well, Dennis, you're at home, and I know you've had a lot of time to contemplate being at home and stuck there with COVID-19 and just kind of staying safe out there. But talking about equipment and your development plan with the juniors there, what do you see, and how do the juniors go through this process and understanding what's the right fit for them in their technique and how equipment affects that?
Yeah, it's really important that we continue to go through the quarterly gappings. Even though we're in the middle of the off season up here in the Northeast, we're making sure that equipment is always right. Some of our juniors are still playing tournaments, so we're making sure their set makeup is right. If there's any outliers or clubs that don't fit, we're making sure that we address that. But more importantly, we're really working on making improvements, fundamental improvements to the way they're moving in their golf swing. So we really want to make sure that the equipment fits. As Nick referenced, having something too long or too heavy, they're not going to be able to make those swing changes that they may want to make. So we're making sure that it fits for those reasons as well. Lastly, we'll see a lot of strength and speed gains this time of year with all the hard work they do in the gym. So we know that we don't want it to get too disconnected where their equipment is and where they're actually moving and the speeds they're moving at.
Yeah, and that's so important. Obviously, Kyle and Tyler on the physical side, you guys see that as a big thing that you're addressing every single time you're doing your FMS testing, you're doing your weight and height checks as well. Yeah. So, because that's a big part of this, knowing that if they're going into maybe a growth spurt phase, you can alert the coaches and let them know that, hey, this is what's going on, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
What do you see, and what are some of the things that you see for the equipment side?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, number one, you have to be tracking that stuff. Whether you're a golf coach or a physical coach or even just an equipment guy, you have to know when your students are going through those growth spurts, because that's going to affect different things. In the gym, we're really training speed when the junior's going through a growth spurt. They're going to feel kind of awkward and all that other stuff. Feel tight when they might not actually be tight. They're just really growing really fast. We want to make sure that they stay coordinated and just train all that speed so that can transfer into their golf swing too, and just feel a little more natural in their golf swing rather than just kind of like, where's my hands and where's my feet? Yeah. What are they doing? They really can't feel their body in space. So it's really important in the gym side to train that speed when that junior's going through that growth spurt.
Yeah, and that's so important when you're going through kind of, exercising them to going through the process of club fitting experiences and seeing what they're doing, gaining club head speeds, gaining ball speeds. And I know we're talking about junior golfers, and some of those could be as young as 9, 10 years old, and as old as 19 years old. And you're seeing that. And there's a wide range, obviously, of what's happening, even within the certain age groups, right? Because of their growth development phases, right? So they're all growing at the same time. So are there some areas that you're seeing with a player, the young junior player, for example, that you go, you know what, that's just a good fit for you, and let's not mess around with it. Let's grow out of that part of it, and we'll look at or assess it maybe next month or maybe a quarter from now.
Yeah, this quarterly gapping period is 3 months from the last quarterly gapping, and a lot can happen in 3 months, as Kyle alluded to, with the physical development and Dennis, and about how we're kind of focusing on making sure the technique is in a solid spot for the winter. And so you have 3 months since we've last looked at the specs, and we call it a quarterly gapping, but we look a lot more at just the distance. We look at like the launch, spin, and land angle, which has a lot to do with how the ball performs when it hits the green. So a lot of kids, if the ball's coming in too shallow and it's not holding the green, they may try to get the ball up into the air, and vice versa. If they're hitting it really high and sometimes too high and too spinny, they start finding ways to get the ball to launch lower, and it might not be their technique doing that. It might be the equipment. A lot of times we have these high launch shafts that the juniors use, and they go through a growth spurt, they get really strong, and all of a sudden that high launch shaft is not exactly what they need. And as a club fitter, we're trying to hit a moving target. They're constantly growing and moving. So we reshafted 3 sets of irons over the summer for juniors, and the head was still good, but the shaft wasn't working. It was too soft, too light, and the ball was going too high, and they were kind of trying to keep the ball fly down with their swing, and so that's just one example of how these quarterly gappings can help facilitate a good environment for the junior to develop.
Yeah, that's great information. And Dennis, we're talking about this on the golf coaching side as well, and obviously Nick, part of the coaching team, and you guys have been doing a lot of captures on swing catalysts and trying to understand really what juniors are doing and how this equipment is affecting. whether they're losing posture, how they're using the ground, or maybe they're not using the ground because they're compensating so much for maybe the weight of the club. Tell me more about what you're seeing and how the equipment is affecting that development.
Yeah, we're really, we're in the early stages of really starting to understand, how equipment is really affecting juniors' movement. And again, we're looking at it over a long period of time. We're trying to see, if somebody had clubs that were too long and too heavy, where does their swing end up, in the future, maybe a year or two down the road, because of those swing tendencies that they developed around that equipment. So I think what Nick is really talking about is that a junior is going to respond to the equipment that they have in their hand or to the shots that they hit, and they're going to, as he said, find a way. So, so too long and too heavy is a problem, but also, perhaps being too light or not giving them the ball flight that they want, they'll start to change their movement. So seeing it at the ground level is really cool with Swing Cat and just seeing how they're using those forces. We've definitely seen some early extension, which at this point it's kind of a theory that I think that relates to maybe having something that's too long and too heavy, but also relates to their function as well. So, really excited about learning more about that.
Yeah, I think that's great. And actually, I don't know if you guys watched the PNC Championship this past weekend. Obviously the debut of Charlie Woods was a big deal, and everybody was watching and talking about that, and Tiger. What I thought was very interesting, if you guys saw, I've forgotten who it was, called Tiger out on the equipment that he had given Charlie, because he had blades for Charlie, thought, hey, this would be a good advantage for him to maybe hit some cool clubs potentially. But then I think Nota Begay had called him out or just mentioned that, yeah, right before the tournament, his equipment guy said, hey, let's switch these clubs out to a better, more appropriate fit club for Charlie. And maybe that's why we saw Charlie, he made some great swings, obviously, and he did some great things out there under all that scrutiny of TV.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really cool that, he was just recognizing that, hey, maybe this equipment that he had in his hand wasn't quite appropriate for where he was, as an 11-year-old developing, and maybe it's too long, maybe it's too heavy, or maybe it was just not the right confidence booster, if you will.
Yeah.
So would you recommend, when you see parents do this quite often, Tiger's not the exception. That's the rule out there. Most parents determine what their kids are playing because they want to see them do well, and their expectations of them doing well. What's your advice to the parents when they're looking at buying clubs for the for their junior golfers? To say it's okay that they're not hitting it as far as you may think someone else is doing right now, especially now while you're going through this whole developmental phase, off-season, training. What's your advice to them?
Yeah, as a parent myself, it's our instinct to try to make sure our kids have all the tools to succeed. We want to make sure that they have everything they need to be successful, and unfortunately, your good intention can sometimes be detrimental to your long-term success. That road of trying to help and trying to provide for them, you have to really be careful because this stuff has long-lasting effects. So much so that, you can kind of watch TV, watch the PGA Tour on TV and see juniors that have moves that you can just tell it came from the equipment. It was learned, a movement that's how they learned how to hit the ball, whether it's Joaquin Neiman or Justin Thomas or any of these moves.
Lexi Thompson. There are a lot of stories about her, having, basically men's clubs and swinging them. And, obviously she, went through a growth spurt early, an early developer, if you will. But yet they were probably too heavy for her and maybe still slightly too long for her, and you see her move. Obviously, she's a great player and where she is, but there are some residual effects that probably are hindering her from maybe being a better player.
Yeah, and if you look at the other side of the spectrum with, Kyle Berkshire saying he used really lightweight women's clubs with a lot of kick, and here's a guy that swings faster than anybody on the planet. So, that's just a good, way to look at it and look at both sides, that it really matters, that there's a reason why the tour players have their tour vans every week show up. It's not, they're constantly evolving. Their bag is constantly changing. They're trying new stuff. They're always trying to get better. And a lot of times they'll have one or two clubs that they have figured out that they want to keep, but everything else is kind of open for discussion, that they'll listen if an equipment manufacturer says, hey, I want you to try this. You know, your stats say you're a little bit below par in this area, and this club may not be the right fit for you, and they're willing to give it a try. So it's this constant, it's not like a one-time fit, it's this constant evolution of equipment.
Yeah, and I think one of the great things that you're doing right now here at the Golf Performance Center and the custom clubs is you're actually going through this process of developing a system that allows those juniors to go through this process more, call it smoothly, or with less kind of, hey, I've got to go to this or that. It's really a better progression, if you will, to the right fit club for them.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's really not a great fit for a junior. It's kind of between that U.S. kids and that premium set, and you know, there's a lot of things that people try, maybe a lady set or a senior set, but you're kind of stuck with that one size fits all from that middle range. And we're trying to give some more options in that zone where we have a lot of different driver lengths for that junior that's between the U.S. kids, that he's picking up some speed and strength, but maybe he's not ready for the heavy steel and the adult clubs yet. So he's kind of in that no man's land. And so I think that there's a big opportunity for us to create something that can help a junior reach, you know, create a good environment.
Yeah. And Dennis, I think one of the things, and I think we all recognize, and we see a lot of YouTube videos and Instagram videos posted of a lot of young players these days, and a lot of times they're trying to promote themselves as this, you know, eminent great golfer to come, right? I mean, that's, you know, hey, we want to get recognized and see what we're doing. And these prodigious links that these young players are hitting, I think it's really important out there too to identify that that may not carry out or carry through as they develop on. What is your best advice out there for the parents, you know, when they're looking at equipment, you know, versus developing their junior athletes, you know, maybe for greater success?
Yeah, I think it's so important to ideally get good information. I mean, to get an assessment and understand, you know, if you say, oh, my junior's not hitting it as far as his competitors. Well, I mean, first of all, let's look at size. And, you know, if he's a head shorter than his playing competitor, well, that's a simple reason right there. But I think some people just won't accept kind of the short-term results of maybe not hitting it far enough and not getting the scores that they want in the short term. But, you know, Kyle Berkshire, I think, is the perfect example of somebody who swings at 155 miles an hour that said he always had kind of light, you know, women's clubs. So, you know, again, it's just kind of short-term gains versus long-term results. I mean, which one do you want? So I think you really have to assess how you're going about it, and what are your goals? What is the goals of the junior that we're talking about? If they want to play on the PGA Tour, they're going to have to swing the club with some good club head speed. So I think, you know, you really need to make the right decisions now for long-term success.
Yeah, that's great advice. And, you know, speaking of Berkshire, I was reading recently, you know, he went to North Texas University to play golf, and he played there, and he actually had a reasonably good golfing career in college. So it wasn't like he intended to go out and only just break speed records. He actually was a good golfer and just had that speed, to your point, as he used lighter clubs as he was a junior and progressed on, which he, again, developed that. It wasn't something that it was, you know, God-given necessarily. It was probably, you know, sculpted out of the clay there, if you will.
Yeah.
Right? So,
yeah, some really good circumstances all kind of came together and provided this really nice environment for him to grow and blossom into this long drive, you know, a lot of club speed.
Yeah, now the rumor has it he wants to go out there and compete against DeChambeau on the PGA Tour. I mean, that should be fun. I like to see that kind of happening. So Nick, kind of going through this now, obviously the golf equipment, the clubs are really important, and golf ball has a lot to do with this as well. So I know we hear a lot of discussion about what's the right golf ball fit. You're talking about that equipment. This has an impact as well on some of these other variables we're talking about, distance, control of the golf ball.
Yeah.
Is there some things that you want to talk about on the golf ball fit as well?
Absolutely. You know, we're really lucky. We have a GC quad, a Foresight GC quad here, which uses 40,000 frames per second and takes pictures of the club and the ball at impact. And we do a lot of ball testing. And there's not one ball that's perfect for everyone, but everyone has a ball that is good for them, is perfect for them. So, you know, some kids might need a lower spin ball. That's what gives them that optimal flight and a nice land angle. And some kids might need a ball with more speed. and that more spin, and that will help their land angle and they reach that optimal flight. So, the ball is important, and being able to measure that stuff's important as well.
Yeah, so that means that there's no, one manufacturer out there that says, hey, my ball is the best ball relative to where you are. It doesn't mean it's, there aren't some really good golf balls out there and really good manufacturers, but to your point, it's the right fit for you, which is what's the most important thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so, and obviously that's a budgetary thing as well, because balls fluctuate in price, and there are premium balls that may not be the right fit for you. So I think understanding that too is important as well. So know your budget there as well. So before we go on, chicken or the egg, and this, Dennis, probably to you and Nick, and maybe there's going to be some heavy debate here, but what is the most important thing? Is it the equipment or is it the swing technique? Which comes first?
Well, definitely swing technique. As I've said, equipment barely made the top 5 elements of success. So,
can't play golf without a club, though, Dennis.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Look, it's all relative, or it's all relevant, I should say. Function, strength, speed, size, mindset, nutrition. It's all relevant, and equipment is a huge factor. You are going to respond to the club in your hands and how you hit the golf ball. So, is it the lead factor? I'm not sure I'd go that far, but Nick might have a different opinion.
All right, Nick.
Yeah, I think you can't do anything without a club. You can't play the game without a ball. You can't. You can kick it, but that's soccer, right? That's not golf. So I would argue and say that you got to have equipment. It's part of the game, and you don't have to have great technique to play golf. You can go out there. You might not have as much fun, but you can still play the game. Now, if you had a junior golfer and you had to pick, what thing are you going to do? Are you going to make sure that they have coaching, or are you going to make sure that they have really nice equipment or properly fit equipment? I think I would give the junior really good equipment, because I want them to figure it out. I want them to kind of go through and do the growing and learning on their own. And I think that as long as I provide them nice, well-fitted equipment, I can ensure that at least it's going to be an organic, holistic way to figure it out, that they're not going to have to manipulate too much with their swing to solve the equation.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And obviously, it takes all the 5 elements. Obviously, the desire to want to improve your game and learn more about it. So I think that's a big part of it. Having the right coaching and understanding the right information, from Dennis's point, I think it's essential, obviously, for continued growth. Being physically, having function dictates form is one of those things you can't go without. Obviously, the mental, the intent, understanding there's going to be roadblocks and getting through those things. And obviously then the equipment, right? So as to Dennis's point, it is barely making the list, but it is on the list. But it is, again, important, and that's why it's part of the 5 elements of success. So no matter what we're doing, those things, you got to have the right equipment to actually to do the job at your best. So that is so important. So again, really insightful, and Dennis, insightful on your side of it. Kyle, back to you. One last thing on that, on the physical side of things, and you see the equipment, and obviously you get feedback from the players, but also Nick and the coaches. Yeah. What would be the tip for you, for the audience out there? What would be something they need to leave with today on that?
Yeah, so it definitely depends on where you are in your development. How old are you? What are you in high school? If you're in high school, we need to stick to your off-season nutrition program. We need to stick to your off-season weight plan. And we need to get you to a certain weight and strength level, and you need to stick it. So then now you can move up in the club department, right? You can get the stronger shaft, and then you'll be hitting the ball further and further. Now, if you're a little younger, we still are training some bit of strength, but we also want to get you more speed, right? Mm-hmm. Always speed, especially if you're kind of in that kind of 12 to 14 range, and you might be going through that growth spurt. You really want to make sure that we're training speed, and with function as well. We want to keep the function high and speed second. But again, if you've passed your growth spurt, you're ready to hit the gym and lift some big weights. So then you can bring all that power and strength into the golf season next year. So those are big things to think about when you're thinking about I want the neck, I want better clubs, I want heavier shafts. Well, you got to get in the gym, and you also have to focus on your nutrition plan. If all three things aren't working properly, you're not going to be able to hit those clubs. And there's other things that are going to come along the way, as well as injury might pop up. So want to make sure that you're sticking to your plan. That's the biggest key. Consistency.
Awesome. I think that's really good discussion on equipment. I think hopefully it's been helpful for you to understand, what we're doing and what you should be looking for in that equipment side of things, developmentally, how it's going to affect what you're doing. I do think that, reach out, find the experts in the field and get some good quality information, then go on to the Junior Golf Hub. There's a great library of information there, so download that app there. Andrew, do we have any questions?
We do. Our first question is, if you're going through an off-season workout program, should you wait to get fitted for clubs or make changes as you go?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I'll leave it up to Dennis or Nick here to answer that. What do you think, Dennis? You got any insight?
Yeah, I think it's important first to find out where your equipment is. I mean, if there are any major issues, I think that need to be addressed. As we keep saying, you're going to respond to your equipment. So if there's something that's way off, that could be an issue as you work on anything in your golf swing. So that would be step one. And then I think, sure, you can go through and try to get stronger and make some swing changes and improvements, and then reassess it. Perhaps in March in 3 months.
Great.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. It's both. It's not one or the other. It's let's give it a look right now and see if there's something that is glaring, something that jumps out on the paper when we spec out the sheet. We look at all the swing weights, all the lofts, lies, lengths, grips, and sometimes there's something that needs to be changed right away. Like we don't need to wait to move. And then also in a few months, maybe 3 months, like our quarterly gapping, you check it again and you see where their strength's at. It's nice to have a plan, but we don't really know the outcome of that plan yet. We don't know just how strong they're going to get, and you can only really fit them kind of for where they are right now and with a hope to look at it in the future and know that sometimes things need to be adjusted.
Yeah, that's great.
Next question is, when is a good time to do off-season gapping?
Oh, I think that's probably a really good time for you, Nick.
Right now, today. Yeah, I mean, the sooner the better. I mean, there's really no time like the present.
Yeah. Dennis, do you have any insight on that one as well?
Yeah, I think it's a continual process. I think I agree. That's what we've done here in our academy. We've just taken everybody through a gapping, and then we'll do it again in March, getting ready for the season. So I think that's a good answer.
And lastly, how do I know if my clubs are too heavy?
All right, that's a good question.
Yeah, it's a really good question because right now there's not one thing that you can check to see if the clubs are too heavy. It takes a little bit of a team. You got to have an expert eye in there watching the person swing. You can kind of see some tendencies, like coming out of posture generally is something you see when the clubs are too heavy. Kids standing up to try to get the club up in the backswing. You can see the way they use the ground looks a little different when the clubs are too heavy. They're really trying to get that club swinging at a high speed. And also you can look at their club speed in general. Are they in that zone of success for club speed? US Kids has a nice chart of target club speeds for certain ages, and if they're way underneath that, generally you can start looking at the length and the weight of the clubs they're swinging that could be holding them back.
That's great. Good answer.
That's all we have for the questions for today, but we do have a pop quiz winner.
All right.
And it's Ted Swartwood.
Ted Swartwood. All right, Ted. Congratulations. You're going to get this beautiful, lovely Can Pitch Fix divot repair tool. So thanks for tuning in and watching and sending in your answers. So thanks so much. We appreciate that, and we appreciate everybody watching today. And want to make sure that you guys tune in for next week. We've got off-season competition and scheduling, understanding what's appropriate for you, because not everybody should be playing in their off-season, but there are times and there are people that should be playing, and I think Dennis and I will be covering that next week as well. Also, as Nick just talked about, and Dennis talked about, understanding, what you need to do, that player development index, so that, doing that self-assessment, going to the Junior Golf Hub, downloading that, going through that process, getting to know what's in your bag will help you understand where you are. And maybe you start to see where you are as far as your growth spurts happening. Obviously, there's some physical things, nutritional things there that you can understand if you put yourself through this assessment. I think you might find that you're going to get some good answers there and what you need to do, and maybe reaching out to the right experts as well, and also maybe lead you to wanting to take a coach guided assessment. And finding those coaches. Obviously, the Golf Performance Center here does those assessments, does the PDI assessments here, full assessments. So it'd be a great experience for you to come in and try that out as we get into the off season as well. So check that out. And as always, I want to say thank you to our sponsors, the Junior Golf Hub. Making sure you're downloading that app. Again, getting that PDI in your pocket, that self-assessment, those college coaches reaching out, making that connection, getting those guys, those coaches following you, but also learning that process, getting yourself educated on what that college process is all about and player development. So that app is a great app. Download it today. Also, Ethan Allen Preparatory, achieving your greatness in the classroom, on the golf course, and in life, making sure you are prepared for what you want to accomplish in your life. So again, as always, make sure you're getting after it and enjoy your journey. Thanks for tuning in. Happy holidays.